If you would have asked me, like, what do you believe? My first statement probably wouldn't have been that, I was created by a God who loves me and has a purpose for my life. My wife and I, we both grew up in homes that knew Jesus. We both, had great parents that, tried to align our families with our faith. My perception of God and Jesus was, I always acknowledged Jesus as, the Son of God and died for my sins and, ultimately was my pathway to heaven. But I always felt like it was just kind of like over here, it's on the back burner. That's for someday later. And right now I'm in this life on earth, and that's the priority. We were seeking things that, the world had to offer that at the surface looked like good things. I mean, if you took a picture of our lives from the outside looking in, I think that you would have seen, a family that looked like they had it together, good job, respectful situation, raising our kids, well, 2 cars in the driveway, in a nice neighborhood, like all those types of things that, but for me, and I think for my wife as well, something was missing. First heard about Rock City, it was my brother was going, and, he had invited me and would tell me about, hey, they do these series and they're, really applicable to daily living, and it's something that you can incorporate immediately into your life. And my wife would, try to get me to go as well. She'd be like, hey, we should really go check this out. And for the longest time, I just kind of put it off. I liked the tradition of some of the churches that, we'd gone to in the past, and that was something that I was still, very much holding on to, but it was more because I wasn't interested in being challenged. The first time that I actually, saw Rock City was online. It was, during COVID, and my wife Danielle said, hey, we're turning this on, and we turned it on, and it was probably halfway through the first message that something just kind of like lit up. It just went from kind of a dormant, flame to something started burning a little bit brighter, and I started to get a little more interested. So after listening to that one Sunday, I was like, all right, well, I got to have more. So I thought it was fantastic that all the series are labeled. I can kind of tell what they were about. I could see like who preached them. And I went back and I just listened to every single thing that was available. So over the course of the next 3-4 weeks, I'd probably like taken in a year's worth of content. There was a moment where everything shifted, where I no longer saw God as like a genie in a bottle that I could go to when I really needed something. I saw him as like the Lord of my life that I wanted to walk in step with daily. And I started looking at like opportunities that I had that he would present me with. From a serving perspective, when we first got involved, I was, what can we do? I mean, it was during a pandemic, so there wasn't necessarily like every single available option for volunteering. And one of the things that I found was there was addresses where you could write letters to prisoners. So I started writing, letters to, the CBCF, so the Community-Based Correctional Facility over on Alum Creek, and just trying to, pour my heart out and give some of the things that I was learning and some of the walk that I was going through, and give some encouragement and some, just some fellowship to somebody that might not otherwise have it. One of the cooler, moments for me was I got to be involved in prison baptisms, just a short while ago at that same facility. That I didn't know that those dots would connect. I didn't know that that would be something that was even available for me to do. That was a really cool moment that I think God connected for me. When Rock City opened their doors at the end of 2020, and we'd been watching online that entire time, we knew it was time to go. Like we were ready, and we were there in person as soon as we could. First time walking through the doors, we felt like, like this place takes this seriously. Like they really want to do a good job to, like, when guests come in the door, to make them feel welcome, like they're a part of the church. Whether it's the first time or whether it's, you're there for 5 years, 6 years, there's always somebody there to greet you and say hello. So even though it was bigger and maybe a little bit intimidating to come into for the first time, like after one time, I felt extremely welcomed, and I also felt known. When you're by yourself and you're at your house, that's fantastic that you can, experience worship and you can experience the message, and you can take that content and you can make it useful in your daily life. There's a whole nother thing about being a part of this church and coming and running alongside all the people that are doing, the work, being the hands and feet of Jesus every single day. There's a relatability to it, but there's also like there's a common purpose and like a common meaning that we can all bond together. And that is where like a lot of the change really happens. First time I met Pastor Chad and had a conversation, he asked me like, hey, well, were you giving before? Were you involved? Were you donating your time? Like, how were you serving? And the answer to all those questions was no. Like we weren't giving, we weren't serving, we weren't volunteering. And actually, like on a regular basis, if I could avoid going to church, I wasn't even doing that. So it was, we jumped head first, all in. Life still gets frustrating. Things are still difficult. But but walking through them with a partner in Jesus and walking through them with like a congregation and a body of Christ that we have here at Rock City, it makes moving through frustrating situations and celebrating amazing situations all that much fruitful and more beneficial. So looking back, I wish I could go back 10 years, earlier in my life and get the perspective that I have now and be in the place that I am now. But I spent too much time back there, and I feel like now I'm where the action is. That's where I'm going to stay.